So, welcome to the very first ever episode of the Justice Tech League Lounge, where we bring legal to the people. And we are here with Damien Riehl, who is a tech law leader, innovator, speaker, travels the entire world, has a huge passion for bringing increased access to justice through some of the new emerging technologies. So, first, I want to extend a warm welcome from San Francisco to Damien. Damien, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me on. Greetings from Minneapolis, St. Paul, where I'm going to be getting on a plane to New York City in about 3 hours. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So, speaking of travel, you have been on a whirlwind of traveling, talking about the advances of AI. You just returned from the Vatican. So, what does our American Pope say about
Yeah, the Chicago Pope, I wasn't able to talk to the Chicago Pope about whether ketchup belongs on a hot dog or not, but I was able to talk with a bunch of folks at the Vatican to be able to think through AI, whether it has values or not, or whether it should have values. Sam Altman has says that we need AI to be able to reflect human values. And my pitch to the Vatican folks is to say, you have a lot of human values locked up in the archive. Wouldn't it be great if that archive were to be open sourced, to be able to be ingested by all of the AI foundational models and all of the tools to be able to say, put some of that human values into the AI to be able to think through things that the church has been thinking about for millennia. I've been talking and I'm optimistic with a bunch of the conversations I've had that they might open up a lot of the archive.
that? Two things that popped in while I was thinking that. One, the mythos of Pandora's box, and then two, the Carmina Burana, the Karl Orff, where you had the monks who put in all of their negative stories into the pots, and then came out that whole wonderful Carmina Burana orchestra that we hear that is in every horror movie. And I was wondering, is that one reason why they would say, let us not think so fast right now? Is that one reason they might have done that?
Maybe a little bit. And the archives have been closed for some good reasons, because you can imagine in the archives are the Spanish Inquisition. And there in the archives are maybe some things that are some things that maybe aren't focused as much on human flourishing. But of course, with that, you can think of that like the Carmina Burana example that you gave. But then in addition to that, there's some of the best thinkers in the world over millennia have been, some of those thoughts are in the archive. So I think that being able to take the good maybe and the bad and be able to think through maybe the good parts and how they can help humanity.
Amazing. So looking at the past, now looking into your magic 8 ball, what's in the future, especially for AI? And in this one short year, I would imagine a year ago, how fast we've gone is just blows you away.
It's true. Yeah, I think that we are really focused on the next 3 months because who can even predict 6 months? There's really a drastic speed. It just time has always been a circle. COVID, we realized that more, and I think time continues to speed up for everyone's focus on AI and especially AI in the law. And so, really, what's coming over the next 3 to 6 months is going to continue to be more agentic behavior, and how you define agents is really in the eye of the beholder. But really, the definition of stringing together tasks dynamically. That is a really good say, and that's what we as humans do. We string through together tasks depending on our knowledge of this is the way that this legal matter happens. You have to do this task first, then this task next. And really, as the AI is able to ingest all of the cases, statutes, regulations, motions, briefs, pleadings, and everything that helps our civil justice system work, really it can be able to have an idea as to what tasks are necessary and then how to string those tasks together dynamically. And so that's what we're building at Clio. That is, as of a week ago, I'm now a member of Clio. And so we're with Vincent, really, yeah, it's really exciting.
Awesome.
And really, we're able to take the business of law and connect it with the substance of law, the practice of law, and be able to connect those two things together. So if you have a new intake with a new slip and fall case or a new employment law case or a new immigration law case, we could be able to say, here are cases like yours and here are maybe complaints and answers like yours. Here are motions like yours. Here are arguments that have won before your judge. So taking that business of law and putting that in the context window, all of the interviews that you've done in the business of law, all of the notes that you took as a lawyer, and put that in the context window for our substantive law, our cases, statutes, regulations, motions, briefs, pleadings, to connect that with that context window of the business of law. That's something nobody else has been able to do in the history of legal tech. Thomson Reuters hasn't been able to do it. LexisNexis has not been able to do it, and they can't do it because they don't really have that business of law aspect. But maybe we're the only ones in the world that can.
Wow. And I hope that there'll be an opportunity for law students who are advanced and forward thinking might be able to get a chance to take a look at that. When you talk about agent to agents, I think about the biggest breakdown amongst human beings is in communication, and that's the passing of information. So I think of that chain. And that's where the area of the law really comes in. It's breakdown of communications, whether it's marriages, business partnerships. And so it's all this idea of accountability, expectation sets, things like that. Since you have agents to agents operating in this kind of now cyberspace, will that be a big area of concern, or will that be where the law comes into play of saying what was passed between two agents, or are we able to program out breakdown of communication?
So I think that what you've mapped out just a few seconds ago is the future of where we're headed. And we'll call that the long-term future. But let's do the short-term future. Is right now, you're my client, I'm the lawyer. We have a conversation like we do now through Zoom. You can imagine today we record that conversation. And then that Zoom conversation is transcribed. So now all of that is a transcription is part of the context window. And then you can use that transcript to be able to issue spot, to be able to say, okay, it looks like there's a breach of contract issue. It looks like there's an employment law issue. It looks like there's a racial discrimination issue. So the AI today, if it has the cases, the statutes, and the regulations, that is, what is California law for those causes of action? What are the elements needed to prove California law for those kinds of causes of action? Then you could be able to say, hey, of the elements of cause of action number one, of the three of them, you've only filled two. Let's fill in this bucket to make it better. And so I would say that the short term, that's what we're thinking about at Clio, to be able to think through what are the claims and causes of action and what are the elements of those claims, and recording conversations to be able to then fill in those buckets, to then fill in the complaint and to fill in the answer and to fill in the motions and to fill in the affidavits and to fill in all the documents that are needed for a matter. So I think eventually we're going to get to where you described, where the agents are going to talk to the agents. But I think in the short term, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit where we can actually just record using the tools happening today, put that recording and transcript in the context window, and do our work better, faster, stronger.
And I would hope that you would have two filters. One that would be evaluating like facial, because there's so much in communication, only 20% is in the words we speak. So a facial recognition as well as tone and pacing, and just maybe able to provide a highlight or indicator. Was your client really sure about their claims or the facts? And it could be like an overlay just to say, hey, maybe you need to suss out a little bit in your next meeting that, yeah, you think you have the facts or whatnot. That'd be cool to have those two filters on that, because dictated word is 20% of the communication. So
yeah, that's 100% right. And you're thinking more about that. That will get there eventually. And eventually Zoom will be able to see when someone winced or someone paused too much. That kind of facial expression is, of course, part of communication. But even short term, I've been thinking a lot about how much my media consumption has changed over the last 4 or 5 years. That I used to read a lot, and I still do read a lot. But to your point, words miss a lot of context. That is, compare a book, or let's say an article on software. Compare that article on software to actually watching a demo on YouTube, and compare an article interview with Demis Hassabis from Google, which just released Gemini 3. Compare that written interview with an actual interview with him, where he can talk and you can hear him talk, and you hear the inflection of his voice. Like I just said, inflection, right? You heard that emphasis, and you hear pregnant pauses. Those are all communicative aspects that are not reflected in a written article. So you can almost think of writing as a lossy medium. You're losing the inflection. You're losing the pauses. You're losing a lot of the facial expressions. So I've been thinking a lot about how my media consumption has shifted from written word to YouTube more often than not. And I can actually watch YouTube. And first, I pay for premium, so I don't have to watch the ads. That's number one.
100%.
Thing number two is that I always listen at 3x speed, and then I turn on captions. So then I'm actually reading and listening. And then I'm able to get the inflection of the voice. I'm able to get the pregnant pauses while I'm reading the context. So I'm finding that YouTube is actually replacing the YouTube interviews with Abbas and with Microsoft's leaders and with OpenAI's leaders, and to think through where we're coming. I'm finding that articles are old school way to do it because it's lossy. Maybe we're going back to where Socrates said that he was worried about the advent of writing, because he said that writing is in stone tablets, literally written in stone. And once it's in stone, there's no conversation. And you're actually losing something. And I wonder if we're going back to Socrates to be able to say with YouTube and others, you're able to have a visual and audio medium that is better than the written word.
And how cool would it be in your book club as you're reading and also listening? The AI is able to take on the author. So at the end of the chapter, you can converse and interact about the chapter, and it takes on that avatar, and you can actually ask the author about this last section. That'd be cool.
Yeah, so there's a guy who writes the Every. The Every is a software company, and he said that's the way he reads books. And so he has his AI, actually his phone, in visual mode for ChatGPT over his shoulder, reading his Moby Dick book. And as he's reading the book, he says, and it references some obscure whaling thing. And he says, hey, what is this whaling term on this page right here? And then the AI will then explain what the whaling term is. And so this is a way that takes a static book, Moby Dick, and actually is the really smart person literally on your shoulder telling you what the things mean.
That's super cool. Here at Justice Tech League, we're always talking about how technology is bringing better access. So one of the final questions is like, in this last year, what's kind of one moment that has moved the needle closer? So we see a lot of the big law firms who are investing in a lot of these AI systems, but what about for the average common person that you see is the biggest bright spot?
I would say that the biggest thing is the foundational models of ChatGPT and OpenAI and Google and Anthropic's Claude, and how they are providing a lot of legal information to consumers. And I talked to a Court of Appeals judge, and he said, after ChatGPT came out, my pro se self-represented litigants, their briefs got much, much better.
Nice.
And it's not a coincidence, right? And the real question is, with the unauthorized practice of law, there is a real difference between legal information and legal advice. Where under the unauthorized practice of law, legal advice is prohibited. But legal information is absolutely necessary because those are the cases, the statutes, the regulations. And rich people and poor people need access to that legal information. And also commentary about the cases, statutes, and regulations in the form of treatises or self-help guides from the courts. Those are also necessary legal information, not legal advice. And so really the question is, what is ChatGPT cranking out? Is ChatGPT cranking out information or advice? Because in the past, it used to be if you apply certain facts to the cases, statutes, and regulation, that, of course, is legal advice. But ChatGPT is happy to do that.
Yeah.
So is Google's Anthropic. So is Anthropic. So all of them are applying facts to law quite happily. And really the question is, if you have say you have a question about cannabis law, and you went to a cannabis law treatise, say it's 1,000 pages, that is clearly legal information. If you then select one page out of that and say, hey, this page answers your question, does that turn it from legal information to legal advice? Like some kind of quantum particle? And then, but that's really what AI is doing.
Yeah.
It's saying of this treatise, just like a Google search would say, here's a snippet of 20 years ago, here's a snippet that relates to your question. Does that magically turn it from legal information to legal advice? And what if it does that for the whole 1,000-page treatise? So I would say to your question, what's the most exciting thing that's happened? If we're really, is the foundational models going into the space, maybe accidentally, maybe on purpose. Because if the unauthorized practice of law statute was really seeking to protect the public, the hoi polloi, from the evil non-lawyers seeking to do them harm, let's go after Google. Let's go after ChatGPT and OpenAI. Let's go after Anthropic. Let's go after Microsoft. Let's go after Meta. Because who's committing more harm, quote unquote, than a Google search of what happens with my landlord and what happens. So really, they don't care about the unauthorized practice of law because they're giving legal information, not legal advice. And I would say that maybe is most exciting because then we have to say as lawyers, what do we provide beyond interpreting the law in the way that ChatGPT can interpret the law, in the way that Google can interpret the law? And maybe we turn into really going back to being the advisors that we always wanted to be, but we spent so much time researching, finding out what the law is, that we didn't have as much time for the advisory side. And so maybe the trusted advisor, which is why we all went to law school, maybe we get to spend more time doing that and less time finding legal information that ChatGPT and Google do already.
I really love that. And yeah, it's kind of like you come to the fork in the road, and is the sign that says if you turn right, you fall off a cliff. Is that the legal advice, or that's just information? There's a cliff here. And the person goes, I'm not going to go right. I'm going to go left. And yeah, and then all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute, that's advice. And it's no, we just alerted them that there's a cliff up here. So
that's right. And there's also a First Amendment case in the Second Circuit in the New York, Southern District of New York. Absolve, which is a nonprofit that provides bankruptcy information, sued Letitia James in New York, saying that the unauthorized practice of law statute violates the First Amendment because legal speech is free speech. If you can say, hey, don't drive off that cliff, that is free speech. If you say don't drive off that cliff because it violates the statute, similarly, free speech. And so that's the argument. And the district court agreed, saying that it is a First Amendment. It got appealed up to the Second Circuit, which it took some time. It remanded it back down to the New York District Court. But the Second Circuit did say that the First Amendment is implicated by these. So really, as we think about what we're providing, when I litigated, I would say, the client would say, what should I do? I would say I would research the cases, the statutes, and the regulations. I would say, here's the law. and you have option 1, option 2, and option 3. And they would
Mhm.
say, cool, Damien, which one should I do? What is the advice you give? And I'd say, oh, that is a risk business decision. That is up to your appetite of risk as to do whether you do 1, 2, or 3.
Mhm.
So really the question is, did I give any legal advice? Or did I just give legal information? And I think most lawyers listening to this would say, gosh, as a percentage of my work, how much of my work, billable hours, is just providing legal information and not legal advice? And really doctors, when you're asked, hey doc, I have cancer, what should I do? They worry about malpractice. And so what they usually say is, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I would tell you what I would do if I were in your situation, because that is providing empathy and that is not giving advice that would put them in malpractice risk. So in the same way, you could imagine that lawyers do the same thing.
Yes.
If I were in your position, I would do this because then if I don't risk malpractice risk. If
Yep.
you do something that I tell you to do and then you go wrong. So in the end, that's not advice. That's just empathy.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
just legal information.
Coming from the med tech world, that's exactly the way when I would speak to physicians, that was the phrase and the cadence that I have. So we are coming at the end. I want to say thank you so much for being the very first guest to kick this all off. It is serendipity, or it's actually fortuitous that you are, because it was from meeting you that I had all these great ideas and burning desires. And when we actually first spoke, you lit something under me, which was just jump in the pool. It's going to look messy. It's not going to be all together. You and I had the same kind of passion project of like Justice Tech and access to justice. And that really inspired me. You were one of the first industry leaders out there that was talking about how technology was going to help the average person, not just the powerful and the elite who are obviously going to systematize everything and streamline it and do iterations of it. And that's what really started me saying, just jump in the pool, do what you know, follow your North Star, trust your compass, serve the people, and see what happens. And already in a very short period, just the people that I'm meeting, the little signposts, the little God winks and God nods has been incredible. And so I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for being the first episode, because it makes sense that you would be the first one. I look forward to doing another interview session with you when we're several episodes down so we can look back. Everything looks better. There's better screens. And then I wanted to do a signature last question thing, 30 seconds or less, since this is the Justice Tech League. Who is your favorite superhero and how do they represent you?
In the context of Justice Tech, Batman is a good role model because he is just an ordinary person who has amazing tools at his disposal. And I think right now with AI, those amazing tools are at everyone's disposal. So in a sense, everyone can be Batman, both self-represented litigants, as well as justice workers that are helping them, as well as lawyers. Everyone has the amazing tools that Bruce Wayne has to turn into Batman. So let's all be justice workers like Batman is, except without the vigilante part.
I love that because Batman has always been, and I had this dream as I went to bed. I go, what if Damien says my favorite superhero? And I knew you would. And I was like, why wouldn't you? And absolutely for all those same reasons. And I love the quote that it's not just who we are underneath, but it's what we do that defines us, that Bruce Wayne says. And so we can't keep what's bottled up in here as a great idea and be part of the coulda, woulda, shoulda club, but we have to bring it out and do that. I love that you said Batman. Batman's always been my favorite one, especially he uses technology and tech to defend and protect. And so I think that's amazing. And again, I want to say thank you so much for being my first. You're amazing. God bless you. And thank you for all that you're doing out there in the world.
And likewise, thank you for starting this. I think that the world is better because of it. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Damien.